Hello, I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and welcome to the Inner Voice Show, the show that's about you, about everything that matters to you and your life from a psychological perspective. I'm excited to have a guest today, Dr. Kelly Burris, which is from Burris Institute, and he has a new model that he's going to talk to all of us about. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Dr. Burris, you have your book, and we have it right here, which is The Depression, Anxiety, and the Brain in Your Gut. Yes, in your gut. So we're going to talk about the conversation of depression and anxiety and how your model, the way that you have worked for 30 years with the mental health field. In what way have you noticed that what we do with mental illness and mental health and what we do with the name that we use when people are just having problems?
Well, naming convention is a pretty big issue. And the first question is why do people go to see a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist?
Obviously, something is not going well in their life.
Well, but do they say, I need to see a psychotherapist, I'm mentally ill, or I just don't feel well?
Right. That's what they say. I don't feel well.
Right.
I don't feel well in the way that I feel. I don't feel well in the way that I think, and I'm miserable, or I'm having heart palpitations, some symptomology.
Right. So if it's the way you feel, then shouldn't we call it what it is? Which is emotional wellness.
Right. Instead of mental health.
Instead of mental health and mental illness. People don't say to themselves, oh my God, I'm mentally ill, I need to go see, a psychotherapist. I don't feel well. It's all about feeling.
So, Dr. Burris, what I hear from you is also that you're creating a distinction between mental and emotion.
Oh, absolutely.
So say more about that.
Yeah. Well, if we can distinguish that there is indeed a problem with the brain, then it is a mental illness. But by definition, a thought process cannot be a mental illness. And we have started classifying, emotional disruptions like depression or ADHD or addiction, things that require a thought process to do as mental illness. And it simply can't be defined as that.
So if I go to the other side, playing the advocate on the other side, if I
Sure.
play the other side, what would you call a mental illness if you're not calling ADHD and depression and anxiety a mental illness? What would you call a mental illness?
Well, you don't need to label it, first of all.
Okay.
If it is an emotional issue, do you need to label it anything other than emotional wellness or emotional health?
Wouldn't that still be a labeling it? It's just a different label.
Well, no. When you use the term emotional health or emotional wellness, the client knows exactly what you're going to address.
Emotions.
Right.
Okay.
You're going to go in there to feel better. Now, some of my colleagues have stated, they get very uncomfortable all of a sudden because, they say, well, that sounds like you're going to measure something. Well, yes, exactly. We want to measure. How do you know if you're improving if you do not measure, have some system of measurement for the client at every session?
Well, before we get into measurement, I'm still stuck in the concept of the thought process versus the emotions. And somehow, or do you see them as interrelated, that the thought process and emotions are interrelated? And then if there is if there's an issue with that thought process, do you still say that you go through the emotions in order to shift the thought process and create a wellness? As you create a wellness into the emotions, then automatically the thought process and the behavioral aspect will also shift?
Yes.
Thank you. That was an easy question to answer, wasn't it?
Well, it is.
But there's more.
You had it right on the money. It is thought, emotion, behavior. I mean, everything that we do obviously requires a thought process. If there was no thought behind it, nothing would happen.
Right. There would be no emotion.
You'd sit there, doing nothing all day.
Okay. So if, going by what you're saying, if we're saying there's a thought process and then an emotion and then a behavior, you calling it an emotional wellness. So it means to me that you are putting a lot more focus and emphasis on the emotional part of it. Is that because the misery usually equates itself with the emotions?
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay.
And the issue here is in regard to diagnosis such as depression or ADHD. We'll use ADHD as the best example.
Okay.
Clinicians go in or get a complaint from a teacher that a child is fidgety and out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, what are they skipping? They're skipping the emotional state of the child.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you measure the emotional state of the child, then you can begin to address that emotional state, which equals that behavior. Now, the variables, that are involved there, of course, are significantly widespread. But the bottom line is that you have to measure it. And if you're going directly to the behavior, guess what you're always going to need? Medication.
Okay. So what you're saying is if we actually look at the behavior, then we just want to stop the behavior. Many people have actually gone through, looked at medication in order to stop the behavior. And what I'm hearing from you is you're saying you look at the emotions behind the behavior.
That's driving it.
That's driving it. And then you have measurement tools that you've created. With those measurement tools being questions that the child or the client actually answers. And with that, you can measure in the shift. So the measurement is what is it that they're answering, and then if you keep measuring it, the shift shows that the
Yes.
emotion has gotten better,
Yes.
or gone up and more positive, or has gone more
Yes.
disruptive, right?
Yes, and you can see the change in behavior. Because fundamentally, everything we do as human beings is emotionally driven. So when you do a behavioral assessment, you're skipping that most fundamental issue.
Okay.
It is what drives us as human beings.
Mm-hmm. And measurements are usually a good tool in order for something. What is the in order? What are you measuring for?
Well, we're measuring, first of all, the full spectrum of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, what we have found is that the top three emotional issues are fear, guilt, anger, which equate to anxiety, negative self-talk, and anger.
Okay.
And what we have found, when we improve those numbers, everything else improves. So we have a 12-point checklist, emotional checklist. We have a total of 22 points within three instruments. The first instrument being that emotional checklist.
Right. So I have the checklist here that you brought for me. So it's there's a checklist for adult and there's checklist for ages 9 to 17.
Yes.
And you can find these checklists on burrusinstitute.com, where you see it on the bottom of the page, right?
That's under the tools section.
Under the tools section, yes.
Of our page. You can get the those checklists along with the gut health checklist.
Right. There's also a gut health symptom checklist. So when somebody goes in and checks this out, right? And is the measuring tool here too, or they give it to you and you, based on the measurement that they have, do you interpret these measurements?
Well, there's two ways to do this. You can make a free account at our site Burrus Connect, which we have the complete program. All of our coaches are able to work worldwide.
Oh, good.
With anyone. The emotional checklist there will calculate the before and after for you. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, and it is color coded into three colors. So
Great.
Green is improvement, clear no improvement, and pink is they went backwards.
Rosy. No. Pink is you actually went backwards. Sorry.
So when you're working with a coach, they can look at your color code and see where the problem areas are right away.
Okay. And when that assessment is done, then what is the treatment for it?
Well, that's only the beginning. That's step one. It's a 7-step process, and establishing the baseline, which is what we do with this emotional checklist, emotional wellness checklist. Then you learn how to interrupt, restructure, and reprogram emotions and behavior that do not work. And we do this by teaching the client how how a thought process works. In step two, you basically lay down what your objectives are and how you communicate to yourself about those objectives.
Say more about how you communicate to yourself.
Okay, the foundation of what we do is in regard to questions. So I'll, this is jumping way ahead, but it'll give you an idea, basically and fundamentally, of how the subconscious works. Do we ask ourselves questions?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
a lot.
Okay. Does the subconscious work on those questions when we're not consciously involved?
Absolutely.
Yes.
It answers it anyway.
Okay. So if you agree to that, then how important is the structure of the questions that you ask yourself?
It's a very important, because I've noticed for myself and others with my clients, sometimes the questions are set up for failure, that there's no answers
Yes.
to those questions that we create for ourselves, or there are questions that set us up to go toward the misery. It's
Right.
a lot of the why questions, which we have no control over. Why does my neighbor think of me that way?
Right.
And then it's the type of questions that just goes back and
Right.
forth. Without
Well, something to keep in mind is that we can speak at a rate of about 200 to 300 words per minute, but the subconscious runs at a rate of approximately 1,000 to 1,200 words per minute, which is about 4 times faster than we can speak.
Right.
So where does all that internal dialogue come from? It comes from our self-questioning.
Mm-hmm.
So exactly as you stated, if, and this is why this is part of the process, and the client has to write this down.
Okay.
All of this is being documented by the client.
Okay.
Okay? So what we're looking at when we get to question 5 of step 2 is what questions do you ask yourself about your objectives?
Okay.
And if we see a client is asking, why, well, I'll use a weight loss situation.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I lose this weight? Why is this happening to me? Why can't I stay focused? Mm-hmm. And it's those why questions you talked about. If you understand that the subconscious will work on those questions when you're not consciously involved, what sort of internal dialogue do you think is going to emerge, via that 300 to 1,000 words per minute? It's all going to be negative and keep you attached to exactly what you do not want.
Got it. So this is what I'm hearing. Be with me, guys. That in my subconscious processing, there's a lot of ways that I'm thinking the negative thoughts, and the negative thoughts are being put in a form of questions. And therefore, my subconscious is consistently responding to those types. So what you do is after I do the checklist, and then based on the checklist, we do the objectives. After the objectives, looking at the objectives, then we look at what is our internal dialogue about the objective.
Right.
And if that's a negative or is set up to produce more negative thoughts, then you look at that and start restructuring it.
Right. That is the first thing that we interrupt is that internal dialogue, especially in the form of questions, because it's your internal questions that are going to generate that 300 to 1,000 words per minute.
Let me ask you this. Why is it that you think it's a question instead of the statement? Why isn't you say specifically it's an inner question versus saying inner statements? Do you think the issues are coming from a form of a question versus a statement?
Oh, no, it's always in the form of question. What does the subconscious have to work on if it's a statement? Nothing.
So if it's something that it already knows, it doesn't need to work on it. But if it's something that it doesn't, it keeps bringing it
Oh,
back.
no, it doesn't matter. If it already knows it, if you're already asking a question that it already knows, yeah, it'll still generate the dialogue.
Okay.
It'll still generate it.
So this is what comes up for me is if it's a negative belief system, such as I'm bad or I don't deserve it, or I'm fat and I will always be fat, or it's safer to be fat. Now these things are pretty much statements. They're not questions.
They are statements, but where did they come from? They came from that negative self-questioning.
Okay. So underneath it,
Right.
your assumption is that there is definitely consistently a negative questioning.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where it comes up.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you shift the restructuring of those questions. to
Right.
more positive questions?
We teach
or?
the client how to interrupt those negative questions and turn it into an empowering question. Now, an empowering question will always start with, how can I? What do I need to do to? And in regard to the why questions, which we initially stay away from, because like you said, it's always, they're it's a very Freudian thing. We're always connected to those negative why questions. But if you understand how to structure them, why questions can work also. Why is everything that is so empowering me, or why am I having such a great time, or why is life so good to me? Why do I get along so well with my spouse? Why am I so good with other people?
You're shifting the negativity in those conversations into a positive mode.
Yes.
And you're refocusing the person into an action-oriented also
Yes.
concept, which
Yes.
is it's not only about the past and what happened, but now we're also looking at what is it that I can do for the future. And right now it becomes more of a behavioral question and an action-oriented question.
And touching just slightly on going back into the past and getting personal information. The question is, if your objective is to improve your emotional state, does personal history, is that going to help? And the answer is no.
True.
It will not help. Now, are there times when a client may want to get into that? Yes, and you certainly want to oblige. But fundamentally, you want to establish a foundation that will enable them to take control over their thought processes, so that in case you do inadvertently speak about a traumatic time in their past, they need to have the tools necessary to completely dissociate from that and stay dissociated from that.
So one of the conversation that comes up for me is, how is this, what are the distinct differences between your model of emotional wellness versus the challenging that a cognitive behavioral therapy does?
Okay, first of all, no personal history. We not only don't use it, we don't want it.
You're in the present moment.
Right. It gets in the way. Well, it's not if the clear objective is to improve how you feel, then you need to understand how a thought process comes about, so you can interrupt any thought process which is bringing about an emotional state which simply doesn't work, or has been determined by you not to work.
So in the present moment, when there's an emotion, something's not working, you look at the thought process that is right there.
Right.
So
Immediately interrupt that. And we're talking about
and
questions.
interrupting it by challenging it?
By, a thought process goes like this in the most simplistic form. It is word, picture, emotion, behavior.
Word, picture, emotion, behavior.
Okay, so as an example, if I ask you where you went on vacation last, the process goes like this. You repeat the question to yourself. You get a picture of where you went on vacation last, and then you're able to tell me where you went on vacation. Are you with me on that?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm
So
still trying to figure out where I went. I'm so into the future, going into a vacation and looking forward. I forgot where I went the last time.
okay, well, I'll rephrase the question then. Where would you like to go on vacation? Okay, still the same process. Word, you repeat the question yourself, you get a picture of where you want to go, and then you're able to tell me where you want to go on vacation. You'll also be able to tell me how you feel
Right.
on that vacation. So we get back to that basis of word, picture, emotion, behavior.
Okay. So when you're trying to challenge something that's not working,
Right.
then you challenge it by the wording that came at the beginning. Or the question?
That is at the very core. But of course, remember that we have a picture that's involved there also.
Okay.
So that's moving on to step 3.
There we go.
Did you want to get into?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Well, in step 3, you describe how you see yourself, how the new you. And it could even be on the vacation that you're talking about, or any place else you want to put yourself. whatever the supreme objective is. And these are taken from, step 2, because in step 2 it's love, health, wealth, self-image. You put one objective down for each one of those. And then you create that ultimate picture in step 3 with that. And then we take a look at how
So it's like a self-identity. How do I see myself in love? How do I see myself in the
Yes,
health? Okay.
yes. And in the optimum form.
Okay.
Because here's the issue, and that is, using the weight loss example again. If someone sees themselves as fat and loses 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds,
Right.
well, guess what's going to happen? The subconscious is going to go, I don't have
That's
this
not me.
picture. Yeah. I need to get back to what this picture is locked in my subconscious.
Right.
So they are, inadvertently kind of forced back into, that previous and
picture.
even heavier weight. So the internal pictures is the second component of subconscious restructuring. So you first of all establish that picture.
Now, when you say picture, do you really mean a pictorial concept?
Yes.
Okay.
Because when I ask you
It's
a question,
It's a visual pictorial
right?
concept. Okay.
Because when I ask you a question about anything, it doesn't matter what it is, you're going to get a visual.
Right.
You're going to bring up a picture.
Right.
Because getting back word, picture, emotion, behavior. So what we take a look at first of all is how those pictures are structured in the subconscious. And of course, in the very, very beginning, you never associate with an old picture. So we first of all teach the client how to associate and dissociate. And association, dissociation, the tool that we use is you put yourself out in the theater or even up in the balcony looking down at yourself, looking at this picture. For instance, an old picture of, say, if you're overweight or whatever the objective is you want to change. And to associate, you become part of the picture. You become part of that party. But you never want to associate or associate with an old picture. So we teach them how to dissociate first of all, before we even start talking about these pictures.
So, when I see myself as the fat Foojan, I put her on the stage, I go on the balcony, and I dissociate myself from that fat.
Right. You're looking down, looking at that picture.
Right. And then
You never associate with it.
I never associate to it. So then I say, okay, my objective on my health is to be a thin Foojan. So then I still put being in the balcony.
No.
No. Now what do we do? Because we want to now associate with
You
it.
first of all construct that picture in step 3.
Okay.
In explicit detail. And that is, your weight, all the measurements, where you are, and how you feel. Mm-hmm. Everything.
I got that.
Okay.
I know what it is.
Okay. We'll do a little bit of an example exercise here. When you have that picture locked in, can you see that picture? Mm-hmm. Okay, and we're doing this one because I don't want to make sure that you can associate. I don't want you to associate with the old one. So we'll take a look at the new one.
Okay.
Okay, so when you take a look at that picture, is it in color, black and white?
It's color.
Okay, is it framed, unframed, or panoramic?
Ooh. I can have it panoramic.
Okay, it's panoramic?
Yes.
Okay, and is it perfectly clear or slightly out of focus?
It's clear.
Okay, and is there sound?
It hasn't been so far.
Okay, would sound enhance the picture?
It could.
Okay,
Could bring it alive.
then you could...
Doesn't have to be a dead picture. It can be a live picture.
Okay, then you
It's a video.
Then you can add sound to it.
Yes.
And in regard to our process, sound is one of the variables. We don't, tell the client to add that. Now, the previous ones, when a picture is the most compelling, it's in color, it's panoramic, it's clear, it's moving. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the other variable that we have other than sound is smell.
I smell good.
Okay. So there is a aroma.
I can put an aroma to it, yeah.
Okay, associated with that also, that will
Yes.
enhance the picture.
So you're putting all the 5 senses into work, pretty much.
Right, for the optimum, ultimate
Experience, yes.
picture. Right,
Okay.
Now put that picture aside for a moment.
Okay.
Now dissociated, bring up the old picture.
Okay.
Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Color, black and white.
It's color, but the colors are dull.
Okay, so almost kind of sort of in between, not vibrant like the other one.
Right.
Okay, framed, unframed, or panoramic?
It's a dead still picture. It's not. It's
Okay, so it's not moving.
No, and it's not framed. It's almost like it doesn't have significance anymore. So it's not framed.
Okay.
But it's not panoramic either.
Okay.
It's almost like taking the significance away from it.
Okay. Now, still remaining dissociated while looking at this picture.
Right.
As you're looking at this picture, you say stop to yourself. That will immediately make that a little tiny droplet of water in front of your face, shoot it back behind you, vaporizes into 1 million molecules. While you say replace, that brings up that new picture.
Okay. So I put a replace mode, and then I bring the other
Right.
one in. Okay.
So anytime that old picture comes up, stop, boom, destroyed, replace. Now, one of the things that we do for each client is ask them what would be the best way to destroy the old picture, and everybody has their own way. So we always want to conform to what is going to work for the client.
Right. Whatever creative.
So let me ask you, what would be the best way for you to destroy your old picture?
I like the powder form of it, just like exploding and then being a powder, like going into ether and just non-existent anymore.
So it's just kind of vaporizing into powder and dropping away.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So it can't get recreated, so it just goes away.
Okay. Well, I had a teacher once that said I just erased it, or so everybody has their own little way.
Yeah.
I like the whole water droplet and vaporizing it myself. But anyway, then there's the in order to effectively recognize when those old pictures come up, this is known as your cue, or what can be referred to as a trigger.
Right.
When you recognize that cue, then you program yourself to immediately destroy that old picture, bring up the new picture. Now,
so it takes a lot of appropriate awareness in yourself.
Oh yeah.
So that it's almost like you're becoming one with your subconscious, where you're having the subconscious come in because you're watching it, you're getting working with it. So as it produces something, now your consciousness comes in and shifts it towards your objective immediately.
Right, and this is a part of the process that can alienate some people, because most people are completely unaware of what their subconscious is doing. But there's a lot of conversation, especially in our industry, of people can write dissertations on what the conscious does, what the subconscious does. Okay, I'll clarify that right now. The conscious does one thing, and that is to deliver information to the subconscious. The subconscious does everything else. That's it.
Right.
It's that simple and that straightforward.
We have it backward. We have it this way, that the subconscious feeds information into the conscious, and then the conscious is the one who's making choices right now and doing it right now.
No.
And you're having it that no, the subconscious has its theory, schemes, ways of being, handles everything. So all it does, it takes from the present moment consciousness, takes in information, puts it back into the whole scheme of things, and then decides how to behave.
Right. Subconscious processes it all.
Yeah. And then therefore what your model does is to be very aware at that moment of what subconscious mode, thoughts, pictures, emotions are there. So immediately shifting it, giving it another type of information at that moment, in order for it to process something else and feel another way and then behave another way.
Correct.
Perfect. Now, we got about 6 minutes, so we got to go 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, on the steps, you mean?
Oh, on the steps.
Oh, okay.
So far, we went into the third one.
Okay. If you'd like to keep going, I'm more than happy to keep going.
We're going to keep going,
okay.
And then if we miss it, well, I'll have you again on my show, and you guys are going to go and read the book, The Depression, Anxiety.
Well, I did want to touch a little bit on, if you could interrupt me if we go too long in the process, because I do want to talk about the gut and the importance of the 10 to 100 trillion bacteria that lives in our body. So in step 4, we use all the previous steps in order to do that ultimate stop replace.
Okay.
And that's where where the cue comes in, for your pictures. And this is really the most powerful part of the program. I mean, this has tremendous impact on the people that use it. And of course, it is all documented once again. You know, this is, we do not sit down and just talk. The client is very interactive. And it is really more about empowering the client with the tools they need so that when they walk out the door, they're able to initiate those tools at any time of the day or night, which is absolutely critical if you're talking about somebody who is, you know, in the groove of an emotional state and behavior that may be 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 years old.
Absolutely.
So that is step 4. And the first 3 things that we work on, as I stated earlier, was fear, guilt, and anger, which equate to anxiety, negative self-talk, and anger. And there is a question when we get through this, is if you are in a state of fear, guilt, or anger, what's missing?
Joy, happiness.
What else?
Love.
Love. Yes,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Very few people are able to answer that question. But here are some questions in regard to that. When you're in a state of fear, guilt, or anger, do you communicate well? Do you draw the people into your environment that you want? Do things go your way? Well, no, of course not. Now, when you're in a state of love, and when I say love, I'm not talking about being
romantic love.
Right. I'm not talking about being in love with somebody or you know, love for something else. Just
Like compassion and acceptance
it's
and being
just-
loving and kind.
Right. It's just an emotional state.
Yeah.
That's it. Just like fear and guilt. You know, that's how we equate, or how, you know, I want people to think about this part of it. So when you are in an emotional state of love, do you communicate well? Do you draw people into your environment that you want? Do things go your way?
Pretty
Does
much
life run much more smoothly?
Smooth.
So when you are in a state of fear, guilt, and anger, what is missing is love, which is your most empowered emotional state.
Right.
Okay, so on to step 5. Step 5 takes the questioning to another level. And we have 5 sheets for love, health, wealth, self-image. 21 questions per each one of those. The basic thing that we want our clients to do is take at least one of those, one question per each of those categories, and ask themselves that question every day.
Good.
In order to,
So it keeps
in order
bringing
to have
them
consistent
back in that
maintenance.
mode.
Right.
It keeps-
And there are 5 key questions within step 5. The first one is, does this work for me? And over the past 26 years, in the development of this process, I've had clients ask themselves, does this process work for you? And boy, did I get a lot of feedback initially. It's like, yeah, well, I was constantly rewriting. You know, after 26 years of doing this, not so much anymore. I still do major rewrites in the process. But initially, asking that question, boy, you get. But it was all good feedback because, you know, what are you doing? What's the therapist's objective? That's to help the client.
Absolutely.
The only way
to
you
work
can
for the client.
Right. The only way you can effectively help the client is let them answer that question. Is this working for you? Okay, so that's the first question. And that first question is, there's a lot of flexibility to that because, you know, you can use it to, does this relationship work for me? Does this, just to digress it for a moment, when I did the first clinical study in Dallas in 1992, one of the women in the group said, you know what, I never asked myself that question, and I walked out and filed for divorce. So,
Great question.
So,
It's a great question to ask to do a measurement on yourself. Yeah. So one of the things I'm going to ask you is this is a great dialogue that we're having. I want to give you just about a couple minutes to talk about the gut because I know that's important for you to cover. And for the rest of them, obviously, would love to ask you to come back to our show. And for everybody also to go to the BurrisInstitute.com. Please read the book, do some of the exercises. You can do that. And then you can also contact Dr. Kelly Burris. So tell me a little bit about the gut because we have to end the show.
Well, in respect to both issues, for past trauma and issues with the gut, I can speak on firsthand. I don't get into any past issues in regard to trauma, but in regard to the gut, I most certainly do, because it was such a major issue. Without really, talking too much about the book or anything else, I'll just kind of speak generically.
Yes.
There are approximately 500 million neurons in the gut, lined with the gut. When I speak of the gut, I'm talking about the 27 feet between the esophagus and rectum. And the communication between the gut and the main brain is via the vagus nerve. So when the gut goes sideways, that affects, and believe me, I experienced this firsthand, dramatically affected mood and behavior and the whole cognitive thought process. I mean, everything. It had a incredible effect on the central nervous system. And I have read so many other people's stories online that, going through doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor, nobody understands this. Well, the reason for this is that we haven't done any really significant research until 2008. In 2008, it was $100 and some odd million was dedicated to the research of the microbiome. And people will state, interchangeably use microbiome and microbiota, but they are different. The microbiome is the bacteria or microbes and the genes that hold them, and the microbiota is simply the microbes or the bacteria that's in the gut and throughout the body. But these, if this bacteria is not well balanced, it will affect, and what they're finding out is that the way that the gut, and this is referred to as a gut-brain axis, this bacteria affects the way that the gut communicates with the brain. So when it's out of balance, man, you're getting just, the signals are just so off, it isn't funny. And
so it's important for you to have a balanced body system in order to have your mood, to have the thought process, the pictorial process, the emotional process be also healthy and balanced, because these are all working together.
Yes.
So the balance, the awareness, and then the balance of that part of your body or your body also becomes very, very important. And it seems like you also have a checklist for that. There's a checklist on there. So a lot of the checklist, what they do is to create a lot of awareness for all of you, so that you have a check for every part of your system, and then therefore put it as a part of your goals and objective, and then restructure it, shift it, and bring it back into the new you that you want. Now, we still have 5, 6, 7 for the next show, so hang in there. But before that, before you see us on the next show, you can go to BorisInstitute.com and go over the checklist, read the book. The book is online right now.
Yes, okay. Amazon.
So the book is on Amazon. You can order it, you can read it, and then be prepared. So on the next show, when we go through 5, 6, 7, you're part of the game with us. Thank you for being with us through the process. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Oh, my pleasure. It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor to have all of you and my other guests. I always learn so much, and it's great because, like you, I've been a therapist for 30 years, and it's just having this type of a dialogue with someone to go, deep into different versions of how people have experienced. Like you have put this kind of the model into your practice for so many years and have received a lot of good results. That's why you're coming and, with confidence, putting your book, putting the checklist, knowing that it has worked for other clients. So I always learn a lot, and thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, all of you, and until next week, create a wonderful world for yourself and everyone around you. Bye-bye.